Hi, welcome back to Faith and Conviction, and I'm your host, Ray Harris. I want to welcome you to this week's Torah portion. We are in Torah portion 33. 33 marks the end of the book of Leviticus, so this is our last Torah portion for the book of Leviticus. And here's our Torah portion name, and it's a little harder for me to pronounce, so I hope I get it right. בחקתי, and I really hope I pronounced that well, but I'm still learning my Hebrew. But this comes from the book of Vayikra, means he called, but this is the book of Leviticus, and our Torah portion is chapter 26, verse 3, through the end of the book. So our keyword, our Hebrew keyword, is found in Leviticus 26, verse 3, and it is the second word there. Now the Strong's number on that word is H2708. H2708. Now, Brown Driver Briggs identifies this Hebrew word as defined by statute, ordinance, limit, enactment, something that is prescribed. And as we get over into the Greek, we'll see that it means something that can be ordered, to put in order. So keep all these things in mind, because we're going to have to do some steps to see what this Greek is doing in the Greek Old Testament. However, Esword for the concordance for the King James tells us that this Hebrew word is in the Old Testament approximately 100 times. And the King James translates it as statute, statutes with a plural, also ordinance, ordinances with a plural, but also we find the word customs, manners. One time it's translated appointed, and one other time by the word rights. So it's actually very interesting. So the Hebrew word appears 4 times in this Torah portion. It's found in Leviticus 26, verse 3, verse 16, verse 43, and verse 46, all of chapter 26. So we're only going to look at chapter 26, verse 3, though. So in the King James, every one of those verses uses the word statutes. But let's look at Leviticus 26, verse 3. In the King James, it reads this way: If ye walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them. Now, what we're looking at is in my statutes. That's what we are looking at. The Complete Jewish Bible says, if you live by my regulations. And the Jewish Publication Society says, if you follow my laws. And when we look into the Greek, it's got an interesting phraseology there. And I'm just going to read the first part. It says, Aeon, en, tois, and then it's prostagmasi. And that's the word we're looking at. Prostagmasi, mu. And that word prostagmasi, that's the interesting word that we're going to be looking at. And that is connected by a Strong's number. But the Strong's number that I'm using comes from the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. It's one of my study tools because the Apostolic Bible is a Bible put together that is the Greek Old Testament, and it's Strong's numbered. So what I want us to look at is that when he uses the Strong's number, it's G4366.2. But when you look at G4366, it connects to the word prosregnumi. And that is not the word that we're looking at, because that means to break against. And that is not the contextual word that is over here in Leviticus 26, verse 3. So I had to do some word research to figure out what this word really is. It's prostagmasi. And it is a dual word. The word pros is a preposition. And it is Greek number 4314, and we're not going to look at it, but it means to move to or towards or by, depending on how it's being used. Now, the other word that's in that word prostagmasi is actually the word tagma, and that's Greek number, Strong's number G5001, and that is our word that we need to look at. That word means by Thayer, that which has been arranged, placed in order. And the Apostolic Bible Polyglot identifies that to order or an arrangement, an array, the way you put things in order. So this is what the word means. This is very powerful. It helps us a little bit. And those definitions are in keeping with the Hebrew definition, which Brown Driver Brigg gave us, which is statute, an ordinance, a limit, or an enactment. These are the orders which were given. So if you keep my orders, you keep my statutes, you keep my regulations, that's what's going on. Now what's interesting is the word tagma, prostagma, is not actually found in the New Testament, the best I can tell from my studies. All you're going to find is tagma, which is used once, and it's used by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15:23. And he says in that verse in the King James, but every man in his own order. And that word order is tagma. So I'm like, okay, how are we going to look at these things? How are these things going to work for us? Because we always try to make a connection from Moses over here to Messiah and the teachings from Messiah about Messiah. So what I found, though, is tagma is connected over to a Greek verb. And that Greek verb is called tasso. That is Greek number 5021. So you had to do several jumps through here into the Greek to get your connection over into your English. But tasso means to put in order, okay? Which is exactly what the noun is over here in the Hebrew. It's a statute, and statutes are orders, regulations, okay? So let's see where this Greek word is used, and it's actually used in Luke chapter 7, verse 8. And the centurion says this, for I also am a man, set. Now the King James uses the word set. I'm not sure why it uses that, but you could say the word regulated, okay? So, and you'll see why I'm saying the word regulated here in a moment. For I also am a man, meaning the centurion, set under authority, having under me soldiers, and I say unto one, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth that very thing. So what we find is that the centurion is one who is regulated. He knows what it means to be regulated. So what we have is a Greek word over here in the Old Testament translating this Hebrew word about regulations. So you can't use the word statute and make it a verb. Statutated. How do we make that a verb? But you can take the word regulation, and you can take the word order and make it a verb. Regulation becomes regulated. Order becomes ordered. So those are nouns that become verbs. So what we could do in Luke 7 and verse 8 is have the centurion say, for I also am a man regulated. And that concept is exactly what is being communicated back here in Leviticus 26 verse 3 through the Hebrew. So if you follow my regulations is how the complete Jewish Bible translates it. And that is really in keeping with the Greek translation of the Old Testament. These are the cool things that we find, and it is one of the challenges about studying the scriptures and the words, and because even though Hebrew is here, the Hebrew is here, and then the Greek translates it, and then we find the Greek in the New Testament, and we find the English. Finding the differences in the flavors and the choices of words actually becomes confusing, because we might read I'm always using the King James as my standard, but you go over into the NIV, and it may use a different word, or you use the English Standard Version, and it's a different word, and it becomes confusing. And that's because words become flavors of the definitional meaning that we saw, and this becomes complicated in some ways, but it's actually interesting, and it helps us understand why there are so many different translations and so many different expressions of what's written in God's Word. So I hope it's been helpful to see these kind of things and why it does become complex when we're doing our studies about the languages of the Bible. And I do hope it's been a blessing to you. Until next time, continue to seek God, know Messiah, find hope.